You talk about a nation's instability is through the barrel of the gun. People undertaking coup, or civil service servants don't wield knives. They don't wield. What role can the role of or the function of the civil service destabilize the political life of a country?
Although they do not carry the gun, but there is this saying that the pen is mightier than the sword. Yes, they can misdirect the government of the day. They have that ability to misinform policies, to misinform implementation, and the government could become unpopular.
Okay, so in that, the reason behind governments trying to bring their own civil service office because of the fear and the distrust that civil servants who holds.
You don't need to be friends. You don't need to be family members. No. And for every job to be done, there are requisite or basic qualifications
that are required.
Tools that you need to employ to deliver professionally. The word here is professionally. Professionalism must prevail at all levels.
Let me think, I think you can help us with this. About rules and regulations, qualifications, and what have you. That is therefore stand to there are structures in the civil service, and the qualifications and rules and regulations determine who occupies which position and how one also assigned to other positions.
Yes, there is. There's an established system. You have the scheme of service. You have a training scheme. This indicates what the institution is supposed to do. It also talks about the qualification one is, and there are a hierarchy of grades from one point to another. When you enter the service, where you start, where you progress. Like I said, there are the what do we call it? The regulations in the, and there is also the ethics. You have to even swear and know for secrets, at the point. So there are so many things in the system.
So if I get you right, the scheme of service and other rules and regulations defines the structure and also defines the mode of progression from one other.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. And so, under what circumstance can someone who does not belong to that structure enter to fill, they say, a higher structure, the level of the structure?
See, if you look at the civil service, no matter the education you have, to start at the, if higher qualification, you are supposed to start at the graduate, giving some step increments. If that's the first time you are entering the service. Because to move from one level to another, you must have served a number of years at that grade where you are. You must go through an interview. Basic qualification must be there. And then when you go through the interview and you pass, then you are promoted. It also depends on the your performance at the grade where you are before you even qualify to attend the interview.
Okay.
So there is a report.
Appraisal of that kind of thing.
Yes. Okay. Right. Before you are even choosing to face the interview panel.
Suitable for whichever promotion. Yes. Okay. So it's not, so suitability does not just depend on qualification, but maybe some exposure, experience, and things you've gained on one grade before that makes you fit for. Yeah. So that brings some kind of a succession planning or what have you, isn't it?
Exactly.
Okay, but then, so how, I think I should come to the independence of the civil service protected. If you read Article 195 of the Constitution, it's about appointments, etc., of public officers. And it says that, one says that, subject to the provision of this Constitution, the power to appoint persons to hold or to act in an office in the public service shall be vested in the President, acting in accordance with the governing council of the service concerned, in consultation with the Public Services Commission. Let me add a two. The President may, subject to such condition as he may think fit, delegate some of his functions under this article by directions in writing to the governing council concerned, or to a committee or to any member of that governing council, to any public officer. Basically, Mr. Given us the structure, given us the scheme of service, and how can what do you call it, be promoted or grow from one ladder to the other. Yet Article 195(1) talks about the power of the President to appoint. Not undermine the independence of the service, or how does the two interplay?
Thank you. But do you mind if I go back to deal with the question you asked earlier about the dichotomy between the civil service and the public service?
Please, you can go ahead.
Now, the public services generally is provided for under Article 190 Constitution, and it lists the services that the Constitution deems as public service. So you have the legal service, we have the audit service, you have the civil service, we have the immigration service, and all the other services. Ghana education, they all come under what we call the public service. So under the public service, Mr. Ankara defined who a civil servant is, but as this department and agencies, the employees under this institution, ministry, department, and agencies, under the central level, are deemed as civil servants. Now, if you go back, every public servant used to be a civil servant. So the distinction was a civil servant versus the military service.
Okay.
So every person under the colonial government was a civil servant who was not a military person, but serving the republic or serving the British colony, was a civil servant. So when we gained independence, we maintained that. So around 1960, every person who was working was a civil servant who was not. So gradually they started taking out other public services out of the civil service. So GES was created and created out of the civil service, and all the other services, only ministries, employees are at the central level are deemed to be the civil servant.
Okay.
And even before, very recently, the local government employees were also civil servants until the local government services was created. So if you look at the Constitution anticipated that. It said civil servants included employees at the center level and at the local level until a law is passed taking out this local service. So we now have local government services now taken out of the civil service. So we have the local government services now. But even after the Constitution came into they were all civil servants until the law was passed, I think 2010, thereabout, creating the local government services. Now, that Life 1 talks about the president appointing everybody. In fact, every public servant. In fact, that includes a cleaner in the ministry. That's the meaning. The president has power to appoint everybody. You have become a politician. No. It just says that power is given to the president to appoint everybody under the public services. But because it is so large, the president cannot appoint everybody. If you look at 1952, it says that the president can delegate this authority to another person. So you see that the president normally delegates to councils and other things to appoint lower levels of the public services, not only the civil service, lower levels of the public services. So you don't see the president signing the appointment letter of a cleaner at, say, head of civil service office or a clerk. But under this act, is appointed by the president because the president has delegated that authority to other persons other than he himself.
So let me come in here.
Yes.
You realize that even authority to appoint that is vested in the president, there's a caveat that says that in accordance with the advice of the governing council of the service. There are no governing councils. What happened to such appointment?
So that's the view of some of us that say that reading Article 1951, even to appoint somebody in an acting position, councils of the relevant service must have advised the president, and that advice from that council would have been done in Constitutional Services Commission. You cannot be said to be appointing somebody even in an acting position, because it's clear to appoint somebody in that position or to act in that position, the councils must advise you, the president, and the Supreme Court has interpreted this, saying that acting on the advice to say that the president must necessarily take the advice from the council. It's not formality.
To quickly add this, which is part of the structure of the civil service, that says that the office of the head of the civil service is responsible for ensuring that the civil service is staffed, equipped, and operational. Is staffed. So the president's acting with the council and are making appointments, and civil service, office of the head of service, making sure that the service is staffed with relevant personnel. How do you analyze this too?
So what it simply means that the president is not in a position to determine the staff strength or the requirement of the staff strength of every institution, every civil service institution. So the Civil Service Council, the head of civil service, will determine that this ministry, this department, this agency require this level of staff strength. So they will advise the president that, look, so we need this level of staff strength, we need this caliber of people, and the president will appoint accordingly. So chief directors, the council advise in consultation with the Public Service Commission, and the president appoints the chief director. Does it mean that the president has an unfettered authority to just appoint? No, the president appoints based on that advice from the relevant governing council in consultation with the Public Services Commission.
I can feel that Mr. Ankra has something, he's not fool with something. Do you have an opinion on this?
I think he's explaining everything.
Okay.
And see, the issue is that they are talking about in accordance, the councils, in accordance with what the councils have advised.
Sure.
With PSC is in consultation. There are two different words. So it's very critical. It means that the councils or the head of civil service will sort out the qualifications and everything. And if they are satisfied, before the consultation will be done.
Yeah. Doc, your opinion?
It's interesting discussing this issue. The whole issue, from the way lawyer explain it and Mr. Ankra, it is administratively clear that it is a bottom-up approach. That, as I said earlier, the president might never have seen you, but the structure is there. It must function. And so it starts from the bottom. So they would recommend, the rest is actually, should I say, ceremonial.
Yes.
It's actually ceremonial because the bottom knows the person. The bottom has assessed the person. The bottom has interacted with the person. The president, the question of just signing the
formality.
It's formality. That's the word I was looking for. So it's a bottom-up approach then. So the council, everything must be followed, and then the recommendation is to the president.
In fact, it's getting very interesting, and we'll go on a short commercial break. When we come back, we'll look at the PNDC Law 327 that defines the structure and the functions of the civil service vis-a-vis the the Births and Deaths Act 2020 Act 1027, and look at how they relate. Viewers, I'm sure you are enjoying our discussions. We would expect that if you have some comments, you can share with us on our Facebook page or on our WhatsApp page. You can also tune in to CLOG TV on our social media handles, and I'm sure you would get well educated and well informed. We will return soon. Stay tuned.
This is how we do. M-I-M-I, Divalish, a.k.a. You know the name?
Ghana music.
morning we're discussing researching the civil service, researching the civil service. We got to a point where we wanted to look at the relation the Civil Service Act, PNDC Law 327, as it defines the structures and this. These are the framework that governs the birth and deaths registry. That is Act 2020, sorry, Act 1027. And I would want to start with lawyer with your permission.
Now, so if you look at the Civil Service Act 1993, it clearly defines who a civil servant is, and it also clearly provides for the functions of the civil service. And you see that one civil service is to provide decision makers with policy options. Now, you, the person who is a civil servant, will come out with policy options, you formulate policy options for the decision makers who are making heads to decide on which of the policies that should be adopted. Now, when a policy, that's the main function, and the other main function of the civil service is policy implementation. When the political decision taker takes a policy option that is formulated by the civil servant, then the civil servant again to implement. So the civil service will implement. First, the civil service will do research, come out with options. The decision maker, who is normally the political head, will choose the option. I will take a decision that we should go for A rather than B. It's passed back to the civil servant again. The civil servant is a very critical person in the governance of the state. And indeed, that's why I like this saying of late Mr. Annan Kwao, that it is the perfection of the civil servant that moves the nation forward, but not the perfection of the politician. Because the politician does nothing. The politicians will be given policy options by the civil servant. In other words, the politician doesn't come out with policy options. It's the civil servant that does research on various policies, comes out with the policy options for the politician to decide on, and then after the decision is taken by the political head, then the thing comes back to the civil servant again to implement. So you can see such a critical person.
Let me abruptly intervene here. I am looking at, I want to take you back to Article 195 of the Constitution, the powers of the governing councils.
No, on advice of governing council,
advice, sorry,
in consultation, given in consultation. So, yes.
Thank you. And just suppose that on the article, on the birth and death registry, section 2, that talks about appointment of the registrar of births and deaths. It's in accordance with vis-a-vis the immunity or the structure of the civil service. I don't know how, maybe Doc can come in here, because currently the civil service has no governing council that a president could consult. Again, also is the fact that we've gone through the structure. Then you hear that has been appointed, and the reference is made to Article 195. I want us to clear this Blair area, then we can progress from here.
Now, we have had the opportunity to look at the Births and Deaths Registry Act critically because of the experience we've had with the previous appointment of the registrar of the births and deaths. So we critically look at it. If you look at the act, now it doesn't provide for a governing council. Now the act also says that it is under the Ministry of Local Government and under the direction of the Minister of Local Government. Now that the Minister of the Local Government, the Ministry of Local Government are staffed by civil servants. The Ministry of Local Government is, and the acts that created the registry of the births and deaths does not provide for a governing council. Then it stands to reason that it's the Civil Service Governing Council that will determine, that will provide advice, which advice will be given in consultation with the Public Service Commission for the president to appoint. Do you understand?
I do. So, in that sense, do you see the effectiveness of these
pressures, political interference? So the president doesn't, as Doctor said, the president doesn't need to, but the council, which and its heads have known all the civil servants over the years, so they know that this person is the best person to be here or there. So they will advise you, the president. Mr. President, we think Mr. Dosu is the best person to be the registrar of births and deaths. And how would they just go into the open Ghanaian public to look for a person? No, they will look within the civil service to say that this person, the best person to run to be the registrar of births and deaths, and that, and with the president must have no options. He must. The Constitution, he's the appointing authority, so the advice will be given to him. And his duty, as Doctor said, becomes formality. He must appoint. He can't deviate. He can't say that, oh, the Governing Council has recommended Mr. Dosu to be the registrar, and he said, no, I don't want Mr. Dosu, I want Mr. Ankara. No, he has no such or choice to make.
Okay, I'll let Dr. come in, but I also want you to add whether there's a possibility of the president being ill-advised in terms of choice.
Yeah, maybe there is something the civil service is taking, or the entire public for granted. And that is, there should be a certain level, if the organization has a governing board that they don't have, Civil Service Council would have known that there is that vacancy there and should put up an advert either internally or externally. That we've been taking for granted. That is where it should start from. So in the board meeting or in the Civil Service Council meeting, we should find where the whole thing starts from, where the need for that vacancy to be filled starts from. It must be there. That's where it should start. Either advertise internally or externally. If they don't have the requisite person in, then it's done externally. And it is based on the applications that will be shortlisted. And then the person goes interview before the final decision. So based on that, the president probably is ill-advised because the procedure is there, the processes are there, they cannot be circumvented.
Thank you very much. I would want us to look at this. We keep talking about neutrality and what partiality and what permanence. Yeah, I want to understand the word neutrality. Neutrality. Why it is so important? I mean, first let's understand neutrality and why it is so important for the cast we are having. Mr. Ankra, maybe you can help us.
See, let's first, the civil service to serve our partner is supposed to assist them with their management, whatever it is. As a civil servant, the first thing you do when there is a change of government is to study the manifesto of the government that has come in. That is where neutrality starts. You don't say you belong to this party or you have sympathy for this party, so you wouldn't want to assist them to achieve that government's objective. When you are doing that, you are also protecting the state called Ghana. From my experience, you must protect the state called Ghana. So Ghana is in the hands of civil servants, where neutrality starts.
So basically, the allegiance of the civil servant is not to for every government that comes into office.
Exactly.
So
The state.
or the state.
The state, yes.
Okay. So in that sense, how does one remain anonymous? Then also the fact that there's a proverb in Ghana that says that we're talking about permanence here. Basically, what I'm saying is that when water stays too long in a bottle, one container, it goes bad. Yet we're talking about permanence. We're talking about anonymity. Can you add that to the neutrality? So let's understand this concept and how relevant they are for the civil servant.
Civil servant, they are lost. You can't go directly. The mass media. You should not be seen that you are playing this role to help a particular government. So, any relationship with the mass media, let the politician do it. They will have to promote their program. The civil servant is supposed to advise and help with the policy formulation. It should be in the background. The civil service law and some of the regulations. Before you go to the press, you must take permission to talk to the press. You cannot just go. I don't know whether it's still there, but it's supposed to be there. So anonymity, you do the work, you are in the engine room, but nobody should know.
Mr. Ankra, before you go on, I'm a Christian.
Yes.
I can't tell exactly where it is in the Bible, but it is said that you don't lie and put it under a bushel.
Yes.
So it means that your good things must be seen. If I'm doing a good thing, why should I be
You are not the one doing it. You are talking about serving the government of the day. It is that government whose scandal should shine.
Okay.
One trying to help.
Yeah. So you can.
It's like the issue of
also.
Is it Jesus Christ and one of his disciples said, Jesus must increase while I decrease. That is what we're talking about.
Okay. I'm told it's much
I'm not very good at quoting the Bible.
Okay, I think, Doc, we can come to you. I think that the anonymity and neutrality, these three words are very key in ensuring the sanctity of the civil service. To what extent do you think that undermining these words and how, in fact, first, how these words can be undermined and the consequences of it on the structure and the performance of the civil service?
Thank you very much. I do not even Ghanaian concepts. I don't think they go far beyond.
Yeah.
If I remember the definition of bureaucracy by Weber defined, in fact, he didn't even do it, define that bureaucracy for government. He defined it for his Catholic Church. But governments tend, you should be impartial per the definition, where it starts from. And when you are there, you are supposed to document whatever transaction that happens. And that's why you should be, those transactions you are documenting has nothing to do with you as a person, but for the purpose for which you are seated there. So, once you are impartial, you are documenting and you respond to a superior. You should respond to a superior, per the definition. A superior, or you have a subordinate who responds to you. So there's a communication link between you and your superior or your subordinate. So you communicate. And that's what he's saying. You are doing it to enhance your superior, but not you. If you work in an expert system for and you make a mistake at your level, in an expert system, the mistake will go through to the boss and you will be fished out and punished. But here in our system, it is not an expert system. So your mistake will not even go to the boss. Corrects it. So it's the final thing that gets to the superior. So you are never found out. And that is one thing that is contributing to the weakness of our system. We do subordinate. We don't retrain them. We don't correct it.
So, lawyer has made us understand that in reference to anonymity is because our allegiance should be to the state. And our allegiance to the state is a conduit through the government in power. Yet in 2015, October 19th, the head of the civil service issued a circular to all chief directors barring civil servants from participating, including wearing finalia, subjecting oneself for party vetting, holding party membership card, and standing for party. And that's went to the Supreme Court. I want us to understand, because in owing our allegiance to the state, it's because we are first and foremost citizens of the country. And as citizens, we have responsibility to serve the nation in diverse capacities. And one form is belonging to a political party. You were the lawyer.
I was the
plaintiff. Okay, plaintiff lawyer. Okay, thank you. So if you can shed some light on this, so that we can understand these, developments and current developments that are happening.
Now, thank you very much. The circular you refer to is what to.
Okay, we'll take a short break. Details on this issue.
Thank you.
Are you a young person with a passion for
Welcome back to RCS, Resetting the Civil Service. As usual, with me, we have Lawyer Ali, Dr. Mukhtar, and Mr. Nyako. Ankra. Why do I always miss your name? Mr. Ankra, my own father. Yeah, and we wanted to find out some clarity on allegiance. You said as civil servants, our allegiance is to the we serve the government in power. Allegiance cannot be siloed. It comes, and so one form is belonging to a political party. Yet the civil service Service in 2015, precisely 19th October, issued a circular to all the chief directors to the effect that civil servants are barred from participating in political activities, including attending political rallies, wearing party paraphernalia, subjecting one's
led to the very soon. Now, when the circular came up, in fact, the circular came up around the same time that a civil servant was facing a disciplinary hearing because he had gone to offer himself to stand as at the primaries of a political party. And when he was not successful and put him before a disciplinary hearing. Now, based on this circular and that disciplinary hearing, CLOG felt that there was a need to go to the Supreme Court to get the Supreme Court to have clarity as to whether or not civil servants can play their role as civil servants, and so, as you said, provide some other allegiance to the states, i.e. joining a political party or overtly doing political activities. Now, I'm sure the CLOG leadership was anticipating these very circumstances we are now faced with, where the politicians are determining every appointment at every level. And they said that will be part of that system to be able to influence appointments, to be able to influence, to also get into the fray. So they went to the Supreme Court to say that if you have Ghana Education Service members who are allowed to do politics and all other public servants except the civil service, the police, and the military who have been expressly excluded. We said that no, we could go to the Supreme Court to say that exclusion was unconstitutional. And mainly because the exclusion is coming from the Civil Service Act, the Civil Service regulations, the Code of Conduct. We thought that the Constitution did not provide that exclusion, and therefore the civil servant could play the roles that all other Ghanaian is allowed to play. That was the basis for us going to the Supreme Court. Excluded the civil service unconstitutional, and so we went to the Supreme Court. So that decision, I'm sure, that act, i.e. going to the Supreme Court, was to protect the civil servant by CLOG. CLOG said, look, we foresee that in the future, politics and everything will determine everything in the country. So the civil servant must not be excluded from doing politics. They could do politics and still be neutral and still do their roles well. That was the thinking. So we went to and our understanding that the Constitution, which is the supreme law, did not ban the civil servant from active politics. So we went to the Supreme Court to have the Supreme Court bring clarity to the matter. And the decision that I'm sure we'll be discussing, that clearly said that no, the civil servant is not allowed to do active politics. If you want to do active politics, the civil servant votes, the civil servant has preferences, but you cannot be seen to be overly partisan. Then you must leave.
What it therefore meant was that in its ruling did not support the active participation in politics by a civil servant. Is that right?
That's true. So that was a clearer, very clearer, position that the Supreme Court took. They said no. The civil servant, more or less, you are the conscience of the state. You must not be seen to be in active politics. The law provides you with permanency. The law provides with impartiality. The law provides with anonymity. The law would definitely extra. And the Supreme Court said, look, you cannot be overly partisan and minute you be neutral. And says that, look, even developed countries, they are not able to do that. They cited a case from the Canada that said that, look, even Canada with this level of development is battling with neutrality of civil servants. How more the slightest thing, people draw knives and the threat of mayhem, other things in our state. Political differences has some dire consequences in our state here. So how do you allow such system to allow a civil servant to be overly political, to say that I belong to party A or I belong to party B? So vulnerable to allow a civil servant to be actively partisan. So we must remain, the civil service must remain neutral, anonymous.
So what it meant was that the judgment of the Supreme Court, by extension, has provided some clarity to the Article 105 of the Constitution with regards to the vested power for appointment. That if the person happens to be a civil servant or the position is a civil service post, the person must not be seen to hold political allegiance.
Exactly. So that decision says that. So that's why it's very, very important for us to define civil service institutions. If you all know the civil service institutions, then the government must take care of those institutions from appointing people who have just come out of political person. You are appointing the person to institutions that have been clearly marked as civil service institutions. So, because the Supreme Court decision clearly says that no, you can't mix the civil service with politics. So, if we identify civil service institutions, we cannot be seen to appointing
the political
persons to head those institutions. So, in other words, what the Supreme Court is telling the civil servant to avoid, the politician is introducing it, because it looks like the politician has not taken his time to understand.
Let me come in here. What I want us to do now is, let me read some aspect of the judgments, then we'll listen to what the government spokesperson, Honorable Felix Usu
Kwachi,
then Ofosu Kwachi, yes, Felix Ofosu Kwachi, then what the Executive Secretary of the CLOG union also, the response he also gave, then we can juxtapose that on the decision of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Because if you look at page 17 of the Supreme Court ruling,
yes,
the last of the second paragraph states, and I quote, visible partisanship and overt display of lack of professional neutrality and objectivity would be a betrayal of the just expectations of the people of the Republic of Ghana and impair even further the efficiency and effectiveness of these governance services.
yes.
Let's listen to the Honorable Spokesperson, Felix.
That at the event, there has been engagement CLOG and government. And as I indicated, CLOG says that a certain action should be taken. But government has to act on the basis of law. So we inquired as to what the premise for that demand is. If you are saying that a position should go to a civil servant, show us the basis for that position. They have been unable to. I have showed you the law and specific provisions, and you would all agree with me about what I'm reading. You can dig up the law yourselves and read for yourself. Read section 2 of Act 1027 and satisfy yourself as to who has the authority to make the appointment. And second, whether or not the law says anywhere that the position of the registrar of the births and deaths registry should be held by a civil servant. These, for me, are the issues at play. And to the extent that government has acted fully, regularly, and in accordance with the constitution, I don't see why there should be an entrenched. We certainly have not taken an entrenched position. We cannot act illegally simply because a section of our population, in this instance, Ghanaian workers, demand that we do. I don't think that it is fair to the people of Ghana, whose taxes are used to pay civil servants, those who work in CLOG, just like everybody else who works within the public and civil service. You cannot take such a position, which is unfair to them, when the facts are very clear. The case that government was violating the law. Then you would have a basis. As I said, I'm aware that they went to court under the previous government. There's yet to be a determination on the matter. So if the matter has not been determined, there's no judicial pronouncement saying that the position of the law is wrong or what the president has done is wrong. I don't see why entrenched positions should be taken. I don't see why a nationwide strike should be declared on a matter like this.
We all know that Mr. Butchie is an NDC activist. He chose to broadcast it. He was a former DC of the Mills administration. He chose to. They say, if you wish to broadcast or otherwise manifest your political allegiance, political office, step away from the services. This is Supreme Court talking. It's not CLOG speaking or Isaac Wampado speaking. This is the Supreme Court. Now, our members have been dismissed for flouting this law. So, if we are saying, we are not saying the president hasn't got the right to appoint. The Supreme Court is saying anybody with political color should step away from the services. We are not saying it. We are not saying that it is a Supreme Court ruling, unless you are, because they are supposed to interpret the Constitution. And we sent this to the Supreme Court to interpret Article 195 in relation to the civil service. Because we felt we could not be denied to do politics. And this was the ruling of the Supreme Court. That's what we are saying. We are not saying the president hasn't got it. We are saying, according to the Supreme Court ruling, if you've shown your colors, step away from the services. And that's what we are saying. The strike was called by the National Executive Council. So,
you're welcome back. You're welcome back. It's getting very interesting. And presently, the government spokesperson said that government must act on law. And I'm sure all these what we're discussing is the law. He also referred to Article 195 of the Constitution. And we have extensively divulged that aspect of the Constitution. We have the Civil Service Organization, which positions must be occupied by civil servants, and also the fact that appointment is in upon the advice and in accordance with the council. Lawyer, what's your take on what we have just said, especially with where we are coming from? Again, and where I read of the judgment, if you can put all these together and give us an opinion.
Okay, so I think that there's a confusion in clearly in the minds of the honorable to the nature of the births and death registry. Whether the registry is a civil servant institution. Remember that I said earlier that we have the political heads have failed to understand institutions. Now, if you know that the births and death registry is a civil service institution, you can the way he talked, because he said the president appoints, the president will decide to appoint. Remember, if the president appoints a registrar, the registrar becomes what? A civil servant. Now, if the Supreme Court is saying that if you are a civil servant, you must remain neutral, you must not be known to belong to a political party. Now, so if the president just chooses anybody, as the executive secretary said, the man himself says that he's a political activist of the NDC. So if the president appoints him, of course, we all know his political leaning, and we all will doubt whether he will be right, because we all know that he's not neutral. He's a political activist.
Let me help you there. If you look at the conclusion, the paragraph 1 of the that on the true and proper interpretation of the Constitution, a member of the civil service or local government service has a right to join any political party of his or her choice. However, such a person does not have the right to participate overtly in political party activities while still a member of the civil or local government service.
Exactly what I was trying to say. So if we all clearly understand civil service institutions, ministries, departments, and agencies, if we understand them, because the president is appointing persons as Senates, persons as at any level of the state institution. That's the confusion. But if you understand that, and not civil service institutions, but so if you come to the civil service institutions, clearly the births and deaths is under the civil service institutions. The president cannot be seen to just be appointing anybody. Remember, the civil servants themselves are appointed by the president. And as the article says, you appoint the person in accordance to the advice council. That governing council is giving the advice based on consultation from the Public Services Commission. So if you understand that we have civil service institutions, the minister cannot be talking the way he talked, because the Supreme Court clearly says that civil servants must be neutral. So if the births and deaths registrar, which is a civil service institution, and the births and deaths registrar is a, if you appoint somebody who is overtly political activist, then you have neutrality that the Supreme Court clearly stated that civil servants must remain neutral.
Thank you.
So the critical position, the critical point is for us to identify civil service institutions so that the president will know that this area, because the Supreme Court says so, those persons occupying those positions, those persons in those offices must remain neutral.
Okay, so I wanted us to look at how the neutrality and permanency interplay with such appointment, because when you talk about permanency, it gives room for progression, transfer of knowledge, and what have you. So if you have such appointment of this nature, to what extent? How does it undermine permanency and neutrality?
Yes, a live example from Finland. In Finland, my doctoral thesis looked at the civil service of Finland. And interestingly, in Finland, they don't have an institution as we have here as head of civil service. They don't have it. They don't have it.
Okay.
Issues you have raised are in the civil. They are disciplined with it, and we change our nomenclature. Permanent secretary to chief director. They still use the word secretary. There was one permanent secretary who showed openly a like for a particular party. And that party did not win. In fact, they formed coalition governments. So her ministry, she was the permanent secretary there. The minister who was put there said he couldn't work with her because he has been exposed to belong to a particular party. The then president, Tarja Halonen, she said, no way, you are not supposed to like or dislike before you work together. If you won't do, then you should. But in here, the civil servant would have been moved. That is one mistake we make in here. They don't have a head of civil service as we have here. But the people, the officers, civil servants are disciplined to maintain all these things. In my interviews, out of all the 40-something people I interviewed, a former who was a politician. Nobody could pinpoint. The dichotomy is clear. The division is clear. If you're a civil servant, you are neutral. And in fact, that level of distrust is clear.
Okay.
So it's about our own discipline. We should look at our own discipline. We're supposed to remain neutral, permanent. What have you? It is our discipline that should lead us to that path.
So Mr. Ankra, non-adherence to the provisions of the Civil Service Act, and most importantly, the Supreme Court judgment, how that it affects progression, and what is the likely impact of this on an issue like the birth and death registry, where, for instance, people know that, oh, okay, per the scheme, from this level, I'll move to the next level. And now, whilst motivating yourself into the next level, because you know the next 4 years, you will be, then somebody is put in that position. How does it?
You're talking about frustrated staff. The first thing, they'll be frustrated. When they are frustrated, you wouldn't get the needed output from them. That's number one. Number two, let's give an example of finance. What happened at the Ministry of Finance when the past government was there, where so many directors and chief directors are appointed to encumber positions as civil servants encumber. And they were even being paid higher salaries than the civil servants. All they did was to appoint people using the Ghana Revenue Authority. Then they bring them there and they come encumber positions. And like we keep saying, most of the people who were brought there were not people who had done public finance. They are in the financial sector, all right, but they haven't. Now to get with our economy being run down. This is one of the effects. Because when it comes to the minister, it is those who have who are the top who are going to advise him. Incidentally, his own people. I remember a situation where the honorable minister went to read the budget. When he came back, people were clapping for him for having done very well. And the public thought it was civil servants who were applauding. Our research found out that those who were clapping were not the civil servants who were in the office, but those people who were brought from outside. What I would say, his master voice. So that and when you talk, people will be frustrated. People who were aspiring to position when they knew they were qualified, and now in the next 1 year or 2 years, I'll go. You know, they lose interest okay, in the job that they are doing.
Thank you very much. So what it means is that such appointments stifles motivation, undermines productivity, and to some extent even undermines cohesion, because people might not be able to create that kind of team and acceptance when they feel that such appointments has some negative impact on them.
Yeah,
we'll come back soon. We'll come back and join and continue from there. We want to go on a short break, but ladies and gentlemen, treating the topic resetting the civil service, and with special particular concentration on political appointments in the face of the that civil servants who ascribe to political parties has no room in the civil service. Stay tuned and we'll be back soon.
Switch.
Welcome back to where this morning we are digesting the topic resetting the civil service. We have discussed the Constitution, we've discussed the acts that brought the births and deaths registry into being, and we have also looked at the Supreme Court. At this juncture, we want to know what can we do to ensure adherence to the Supreme Court's ruling. As civil servants, what are as politicians, what are our responsibilities? As citizens, we have to do. I can start with Mr. Ankra.
For us, there are two ways of doing this. First, the civil service itself will protect itself. That only in a one way. When the civil servants in the service flout the law, they set up a disciplinary committee, and then if it is proved that he's been politically correct, his appointment is terminated. It's been done. So the local government areas, you can say, civil servants in the system who are exposed to get them off. Is the balancing act where government should cease to appoint people who are colored into the civil service. That is where we have a problem as to whether government will adhere to the ruling and ensure that people who are colored. That is the reason why the association is putting pressure to reverse the appointment that has been made in respect of the birth and death registry. The association has been consistent. When the previous government was there and it appointed, is it Miss Lamte or Mrs. Lamte? We raised issues. We even went to court. And we are still raising issues about Mr. Butri. Abu Butri. So the association is consistent. We put in pressure. It's up to government to.
Doc, what's at stake?
Yeah, I think, strictly speaking, this should not have even occurred at all. This issue should not have occurred at all because there is already a precedent in court. It is not yet resolved. It is not yet resolved. And so the day to seem to be repeating the same thing because I heard talk of the president had power to appoint. I don't think that is the issue at stake at all. That is not it. The president's power has not been challenged, but it's about the processes. The processes should be made clear, and there is this Supreme Court ruling that is clear that you can't do in the civil service. Supposing you were in your party, manifesto didn't come, and now you are back to the office, and then your opponent manifesto has come to you to interpret and help formulate policy. How would you take it? How would you take it? So some of these things, we need to intensify the education so that we will get disciplined. Most of the civil servants do not even know there is this Supreme Court ruling. They don't even know. So some of these things, when they come, we don't put them on the shelves. We need to educate our members. We need to educate people to know this is the rule, just like the annual ritual. It shouldn't be that during party or campaign time, head of service will come out don't go ABC. No, it shouldn't be so. It should be an everyday thing, so that people are oriented. You don't even need to be a civil servant to know. You don't even need to be a civil servant to know. If for my intro, I argue it, and just feel sad because they are ill informed. The education is not there. Yes, the civil service must fight and protect itself, but in all, it is for the betterment of the government and the state. If the state or the government of the day knows that politicizing the system can be dangerous to it, I'm not sure they will be doing those things. I remember I used to see advertisers' announcement in graphics since 2014 or earlier by CLOG, but these days, no, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. So the education must be intensified so that people should get discipline. Once you are well informed, issue will just come automatically.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have a brief take on this?
Yes. So, yes, I think that yes, the civil servant must be the judgment. Also equally be educated on the Supreme Court judgment. Because if the politician knows that there's this landmark decision on the civil service, and then the politician would definitely ask himself, which institutions, which positions are civil service positions, so that I don't make appointments of people who are overtly political. That is the issue here in respect of the births and deaths. So the previous government appointed somebody, and CLOG felt that no, you can't just bring somebody who is political and implant the person to a civil service position. The executive secretary of the president wrote to CLOG to say that they didn't think that that position was a civil service position. Yeah. To the civil CLOG going to court, births and deaths registry is a civil service institution. So this is what led to the court. Now, a new government has come. As you say that because the court has not yet pronounced on it, you must repeat that same steps.
So I was even going to ask that, by virtue of the fact that a perceived error has occurred and judgment has not been pronounced on it, means that that error is not an error and can be perpetrated?
So from the clip you played from the minister, I have no doubt that current government have not asked itself which are civil service institutions, which are civil posts. If they had asked themselves this question, which institutions are civil service institutions, which posts are civil service posts, and knowing the Supreme Court decision, they will not be doing what they are doing. So the case before the court was about to say that, look, births and deaths is a civil service institution, and you cannot appoint somebody who is political to that position. But that will undermine the civil service, and that will also go against the Supreme Court decision. So the heart of the matter is determining civil service institutions, civil service posts. And my understanding is that CLOG actually was so proactive. They went to meet the chief of staff. We have civil service institutions, civil service local government service institutions. So if you are mindful of that, use politics to those institutions. And my information that the chief of staff clearly understood it and promised closer that they won't do that. Only for the next few days for somebody to political, which is clearly a civil service institution. Because until the last appointment, all registrars have come through the ranks. So clearly meaning that these have been a civil service institutions from the colonial government till the last but one appointment that introduced political appointment into it. And this, we are getting a second person who is also being appointed political. But there have been numerous registrars before these two, and they have all been civil servants. So clearly, and the appointment have always come from the head of civil service in consultation with the Public Service Commission. Appointment.
Thank you very much. I think what has been established is that the powers vested in the president to appoint has not been under question, but rather the reference is to the effect the president must act with the advice of the governing council of the service concerned, given in consultation with the Public Services Commission. It is evident that political neutrality is very important and still relevant within the public service, best practices, and Ghana's socio-political evolution require that no civil servant or local government servant should owe
Can I say this?
or be perceived to owe appointments or promotion partisan activities. Partisan activities tend to be obvious and explicit, not visible in and out of public service. Once these commitments are known, the principles of neutrality and integrity are weakened and endangered. This is how we bring the curtains down on the maiden edition of Resetting the Civil Service. We thank you for joining us from the various offices and homes, and we believe that tomorrow same time you would be in our company as we go to reset the civil service. Let me thank our lawyer, Mr. and Lawyer Ali Gomda, Dr. Mukhtar, and Mr. Ankra for with the depth and breadth of the issues we've discussed this morning. Into CLOG TV for other enticing program. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. I wish you a blessed day.